Sam lived in a small, quiet neighborhood. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names and lawns were as important as the houses themselves. Sam loved his lawn. He spent hours each week mowing it, trimming the edges, and planting small flowers along the sides. The green grass was his pride. People passing by would smile, and sometimes children would stop to play near the edge of his yard. Sam felt happy and peaceful there, but lately something had changed. Someone had started walking across his lawn. It happened again and again. At first, Sam thought it was just a mistake. Maybe a neighbor's child had strayed too far while playing. But soon he realized it was not a mistake. It was the same person every time. She was always dressed neatly, holding a clipboard and walking with a serious expression. The neighbors called her Karen. She was a member of the Homeowners Association, the HOA, and she liked to follow rules very strictly. Sam watched from his window one sunny morning as Karen stepped across his grass. She did not look at him and she did not knock. She walked straight from the sidewalk to the far side of the yard, paused for a moment as if measuring something, and then walked back to the street. Sam could feel his patience wearing thin. He liked rules too, but this felt wrong. The lawn belonged to him, not the HOA. Sam decided to speak to her. The next time Karen appeared, he went outside with a calm smile. He waved. "Good morning, Karen," he said. "Can I help you?" Karen looked at him and smiled politely. "Good morning, Sam," she said. "I am just inspecting the yards. Some of them are not meeting the HOA standards." Sam nodded. "I understand that, but this is my yard. I would appreciate it if you asked before stepping on it." Karen tilted her head slightly, her smile unchanged. "I am sorry, Sam, but I need to make sure the rules are followed. Walking across lawns is part of the inspection." Sam frowned. "Even without permission?" Karen shrugged. "It is for the safety and order of the community." Sam felt frustrated. He wanted to argue, but he knew she would insist. He smiled and said, "I will consider it. Thank you." After that day, Sam tried to ignore it, hoping the visits would stop. But they did not. Karen continued to walk across the grass almost every day. Sam started to notice small details. There were tiny lines in the grass where she stepped. Sometimes he found small metal clips that looked like part of a measuring device. One night he even heard a faint humming sound outside his window. It was soft, almost musical, but it made him uneasy. Sam was not an ordinary neighbor. Before moving to this neighborhood, he had worked as a field technician in electronics. He liked to study devices, repair old machines, and experiment with small inventions. He knew the humming was not natural. Something unusual was happening in his yard. He decided to investigate. The next morning, Sam went outside before Karen arrived. He examined the ground carefully. The grass was soft, but there were small marks, almost like tiny scratches. He bent closer and saw thin lines of a material he did not recognize. It was shiny and flexible, like a thin piece of wire or thread. Sam picked it up and examined it. He had never seen anything like it in his neighborhood. Sam realized this was more than a simple inspection. Karen or someone else was leaving devices behind on his property. He wondered why. Was it part of the HOA rules or was it something else? The thought made him curious and concerned at the same time. He decided to keep a record. Each day he photographed the yard and the small changes he found. He wrote notes about the marks, the threads, and the humming sound. He wanted to understand the pattern. He even set up a small notebook by the window, writing observations while drinking his morning coffee. One afternoon he spoke to his neighbors. Mira lived 2 houses down. She loved her garden and was always outside watering flowers. Ben was retired and spent most of his time fixing radios and old tools. Sam asked them if they had noticed anything strange. Mira shook her head. "I see Karen sometimes, but I thought she was just being careful. I did not know she was crossing your yard." Ben adjusted his glasses. "I have heard rumors about the HOA using new devices for inspections. They call them smart inspectors. They are small machines or sensors that record information. Maybe Karen has one of those." Sam nodded. "That is possible. I found thin threads and a humming sound. It is like some small device has been left in the grass." Ben smiled. "If it is a smart device, it is not expecting human creativity. These machines can follow rules, but they cannot handle surprises." Mira looked curious. "What do you mean?" Ben explained. "They are programmed to watch, measure, and report. They do not understand human behavior or emotions. If you do something unusual, it can confuse them." Sam thought about this. He liked challenges. He liked solving problems. Now he had a new problem. How could he protect his lawn and teach the device a lesson without breaking the law or hurting anyone? He wanted to be clever, not cruel. That evening, Sam walked slowly across his lawn, feeling the soft grass under his feet. He imagined Karen arriving with her clipboard, unaware that something unusual was happening. He thought about the small devices and the humming sound. Maybe he could use his knowledge of electronics to create a pattern that would confuse the device, not harm it. He started collecting small items: a broken toy car, some garden lights, a few reflective pieces of metal, and an old radio that Ben had repaired. He placed them carefully along the edges of the yard, testing how they reflected light and sound. He experimented with the wind, the sun, and even the movement of leaves. Everything became part of a plan that was quiet, clever, and creative. Days passed. Karen continued her visits, unaware that Sam was observing every step. He noticed how she moved, the way she held her clipboard, and the pattern of her footsteps. He marked these in his notebook, thinking about how he could use them in his plan. The more he observed, the more he realized that the device was not built to handle surprises. Sam smiled. He liked the idea of teaching it a small lesson in human unpredictability. One night, while examining the yard under the moonlight, Sam noticed the humming again. This time he was ready. He used his phone to record the sound and analyze it. The device emitted soft pulses that changed with movement. Sam realized it was not just recording. It was learning. Every step, every vibration, every sound could influence it. This gave him an idea. He could create something the device could not predict. He spent the next week preparing. He rearranged the garden lights, adjusted the reflective metal, and placed the toy car in different positions. Mira helped him place small wind chimes that could create soft noises when the wind blew. Ben tuned the old radio to create patterns of sound that would mix with the humming. Sam carefully tested everything to make sure it was safe and would not damage the lawn or the neighborhood. The day came when Sam was ready. Karen appeared as expected, walking across the yard. She paused to check a corner, writing notes on her clipboard. Sam stayed inside, watching through the window. The device started to hum as usual, but this time it encountered the patterns Sam had created. The lights reflected, the wind chimes rang softly, and the radio emitted strange signals. The threads in the grass shifted slightly as the toy car moved with the wind. Sam held his breath, curious to see what would happen. The device paused, recalculating. Its soft hum became irregular, almost like confusion. Karen did not notice at first. She continued her inspection, writing on the clipboard. But the machine stopped, its sensors picking up contradictory signals. Sam smiled quietly. The lesson had begun. For the first time, Sam felt a sense of control. He was not breaking rules, he was not harming anyone, but he was using human creativity to influence a machine. He realized that sometimes the most effective solutions were not about force or anger, but about careful observation and clever thinking. That night, Sam wrote in his notebook. He described everything he had done and everything he had observed. He wanted to remember the details. He knew this was only the beginning. Karen would return, the device would adapt, and Sam would continue to observe. He felt excited and calm at the same time. His lawn was more than grass. It was a small experiment, a test of human ingenuity. As Sam turned off the lights and looked out the window one last time, he felt a quiet satisfaction. He loved his neighborhood, and he wanted it to be a place of respect and creativity. He smiled, thinking about the days to come. There would be challenges, but he was ready. His lawn, his careful planning, and his understanding of human and machine behavior gave him confidence. For the first part of the story, the stage was set. Sam's peaceful life had been interrupted by rules and machines, but he had found a way to respond without anger or harm. His cleverness and patience would guide the next steps. The quiet neighborhood was about to witness a human lesson in adaptability and creativity, all beginning with a simple patch of green grass and a neighbor who walked too close. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains of Sam's living room. The air smelled of fresh dew and freshly cut grass. Sam stood at the window, coffee in hand, and watched his lawn. The small, neat patch of green was quiet, but Sam's mind was busy. Karen had not returned yet, but he knew she would. Every morning, like clockwork, she walked across the yards in the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, measuring, recording, and enforcing rules. Sam had learned to expect her and to prepare. He sat at his small wooden desk, flipping through his notebook. Every day he recorded what he found on his lawn. Thin threads of shiny material, faint circular marks in the grass, the soft humming that sometimes filled the night air. The threads seemed to change shape if touched. They were flexible, yet strong. The humming was soft but steady. It pulsed in the night, almost like it was listening. Sam could not explain it, but he was determined to understand it. Sam decided he needed help. He could study the threads and listen to the hum, but he could not make sense of it alone. He called Mira, who tended the community garden. Mira was friendly, curious, and loved to help. She loved plants, but she also loved puzzles. Sam knew she would be interested. He also called Ben, the retired radio operator, who loved old electronics and had repaired countless machines over the years. The three of them met in Sam's living room later that day. Sunlight fell through the window and the small house smelled faintly of coffee and old books. Sam showed Mira and Ben the threads he had found and played a recording of the humming. Mira examined the threads carefully. She picked up one and held it to the light. "It looks like it could be part of a small machine," she said. "Maybe a sensor or a recording device." Ben nodded, adjusting his glasses. "It is flexible, but it could carry electrical signals. The humming could be a form of communication. The device might be sending information somewhere. It could be connected to a system that monitors the neighborhood." Sam leaned forward. "Exactly. I think it is more than just inspection. I think it is learning from the yard, from movement, from sound. It is not human, but it is clever in its way. If I can understand its pattern, I can create something it cannot predict." Mira looked at him, curious. "You mean like a trap?" Sam smiled. "Not a trap that hurts, a trap that teaches, something that shows it human behavior is not always predictable. It can record, but it cannot imagine or improvise like we can." Ben rubbed his chin. "Smart devices can follow rules. They can detect movement, measure distance, and record sound. But they cannot handle creativity. If you create a pattern that changes constantly, it will struggle. You can test its limits without breaking anything." Sam felt excited. He loved puzzles, and this was the perfect challenge. He wanted to see how human ingenuity could influence a machine. He started to plan. The first step was to understand how the device worked. Sam and Ben examined the threads. They tested them carefully, pulling lightly and observing the responses. The material was unusual. It seemed to react to pressure and light. When the sun hit it, the threads reflected small patterns of light. When touched, the threads vibrated slightly. Sam realized it was a sensor. It was designed to detect movement and changes in its surroundings. Next, they focused on the humming. Ben brought out an old radio and a small microphone. They placed the microphone near the threads and played the humming through the radio speaker, analyzing the sound. The humming changed slightly with movement in the room. Sam moved his hand near the threads and the sound responded. Ben explained, "It is like the device is learning. It is recording movement and responding. That is very clever design. Whoever made this wants detailed information. It is not just an inspection. It is a learning machine." Mira suggested, "If it is learning, maybe we can teach it something new, something unexpected. We can create patterns it cannot predict." Sam nodded. "Exactly. But it has to be safe. We cannot damage the lawn, the neighbor's property, or the device. We want it to experience something new, not fail completely." The three of them spent the next few days observing the yard. They watched Karen as she walked across, noting the pattern of her steps, the way she held her clipboard, and the spots she always checked. They noticed that she never strayed from a straight path. She walked in small lines, scanning and recording. The device responded to her movement, humming softly as she passed. Sam realized that the device relied on predictable patterns. It expected repetition, order, and measurement. It could not handle creativity or surprise. This gave him an idea. He could create something human-made, irregular, and clever. Something that would confuse the device without harming it. They began collecting materials for their plan. Mira brought small wind chimes, carefully made of thin metal tubes. The chimes could produce gentle, random sounds when the wind blew. Sam gathered reflective surfaces, small pieces of foil, mirrors, and metal discs. Ben prepared the old radio to emit patterned signals. He tuned it to frequencies that could interfere slightly with the humming. They also found a broken toy car that could roll slowly across the grass if placed correctly. Each item had a purpose. The wind chimes would create irregular sound patterns. The mirrors would reflect light unpredictably. The toy car would move and shift small objects, changing the landscape. The radio signals would add another layer of complexity. Sam imagined the device stepping onto the lawn and encountering all these changes at once. It would struggle to interpret the information. They worked carefully. Mira placed the wind chimes along the edges of the lawn, spacing them so the wind could move them freely. Sam positioned the reflective surfaces near the threads, testing how sunlight would hit them at different times of day. Ben adjusted the radio, making sure the signal was soft and not disturbing. The toy car was placed at a corner, ready to roll along a small path created by the reflective discs. The setup was delicate. It was not a trap of force or danger. It was a test, an experiment in human creativity. Sam explained to Mira and Ben, "This is about teaching. We are not hurting the device. We are showing it something it cannot predict. Human behavior is irregular. It is clever and it adapts. Machines do not always understand that." They watched the setup for hours, testing the wind, the light, and the movement of the toy car. Everything worked as planned. The wind chimes moved, creating soft, random sounds. The mirrors reflected sunlight at different angles. The toy car shifted slightly when nudged. The radio emitted gentle pulses. Sam smiled, satisfied. The next morning, Karen returned. She stepped onto the lawn as usual, clipboard in hand. The device activated with a soft hum. Sam watched from the window. The threads on the lawn vibrated slightly. The mirrors reflected sunlight directly into the device's sensors. The wind chimes moved in the breeze, creating irregular sounds. The toy car shifted slightly. The radio signals combined with the hum, adding complexity. The device paused. Its hum became irregular. It tried to process the signals, but the patterns were unpredictable. Karen continued her steps, unaware of the subtle changes around her. The device struggled to interpret the mixed signals. It was learning, but it could not adapt quickly. Sam felt a quiet satisfaction. The experiment was working. He took notes carefully. Every reaction of the device, every movement of the threads, every sound was recorded. He wanted to understand how the machine adapted. He realized that by creating small human-made irregularities, he could influence its behavior. The lesson was simple. Human creativity is different from machine logic. Machines can measure, record, and follow rules, but they cannot imagine or improvise like humans. For the first time, Sam felt a sense of control. He was not angry. He was not trying to punish anyone. He was observing, experimenting, and teaching. His lawn had become a laboratory, a place where human ingenuity could challenge technology in a safe, creative way. Mira and Ben joined him outside later that day. They walked carefully along the edges of the lawn, checking the wind chimes and reflective surfaces. Mira smiled. "It works perfectly. The device is confused but not damaged. It is like it is learning from us." Ben nodded. "Exactly. We are showing it human unpredictability. It is clever, but it cannot handle creativity. This is a small lesson but an important one." Sam felt proud. He had turned a problem into an opportunity. Karen's visits, which had once frustrated him, were now part of a larger experiment. He could observe, learn, and adapt. He could teach the machine something new without causing harm. That night, Sam wrote in his notebook. He described every detail: the threads, the hum, the mirrors, the wind chimes, and the toy car. He recorded how the device reacted to each change. He wanted to remember the lesson: human ingenuity, creativity, and adaptability could influence even the most advanced technology. As he looked out the window at the quiet lawn, Sam felt a sense of calm and satisfaction. The neighborhood was peaceful, the device was learning, and he had found a way to protect his lawn without anger or confrontation. The stage was set for the next steps. Karen would return, the device would continue to adapt, and Sam would continue to observe. The experiment had begun, and Sam knew it was only the first part of a longer journey. Human creativity had met machine learning, and the results were promising. He smiled, thinking about the days to come, and felt ready for whatever challenges awaited. The morning was bright and warm, and Sam could hear the birds singing outside. His lawn, once quiet and ordinary, had become a place of quiet preparation. The threads, wind chimes, mirrors, and small devices were all carefully arranged. Sam, Mira, and Ben gathered early, their faces showing both excitement and focus. Today was the day they would set the full plan into motion. Sam stood in the center of the lawn and looked around. Every item had a purpose. The mirrors caught the sunlight and reflected it in irregular patterns. The wind chimes moved unpredictably with the soft morning breeze. The toy car was carefully placed on a small incline, ready to move slowly along the reflective discs when nudged by the wind. The radio was hidden in the garden, softly sending patterned signals. The threads were spread along the path where the device usually walked. Everything was ready. Mira adjusted a small wind chime. "I think this will work perfectly. The sounds are random enough to confuse the device without being loud or annoying," she said. She stepped back, satisfied with her placement. Ben checked the radio signal with his old receiver. "The patterns are consistent but irregular enough to create interference. The device will pick it up and try to process it. It won't know what to do." Sam nodded. "Good, we are not trying to harm it. We are showing it human creativity. It measures, it learns, but it cannot imagine or improvise like we do. This is our way of teaching it a small lesson." They moved carefully along the edges of the lawn, making final adjustments. Sam tested the toy car again. A gentle push sent it rolling along the path of reflective discs. The mirrors caught the sunlight and the wind chimes sang softly in the breeze. Everything worked as planned. Sam felt a thrill of anticipation. Today, Karen would arrive, and the device would face something it had never seen before. As they finished, Sam explained the final instructions. "When Karen arrives, we watch from inside. Do not touch anything. Let the device experience the setup exactly as it is. We are observers, not participants. The goal is to see how it reacts to unpredictability." Mira and Ben nodded. They went inside to watch from the window, their eyes fixed on the lawn. Sam stayed outside for a moment, enjoying the quiet. The grass was soft beneath his feet. He took a deep breath and felt calm. This was more than a plan. It was an experiment in human ingenuity, creativity, and observation. Soon Karen appeared. She walked down the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, moving with her usual precise steps. Her eyes scanned the yards carefully, noting every detail. Sam watched closely, feeling a mix of excitement and curiosity. The device activated with a soft hum as she stepped onto his lawn. The threads vibrated slightly. The mirrors reflected sunlight at changing angles. The wind chimes moved in the breeze, creating irregular sounds. The toy car shifted slightly as it rolled along the reflective discs. The radio emitted its patterned signal, blending with the hum. The device paused. Its soft hum became irregular, changing in pitch and rhythm. It was processing the signals, trying to understand what it sensed. Karen continued walking, unaware of the subtle changes around her. The device reacted to the mixture of light, sound, and movement. It was confused but not broken. Sam felt a quiet satisfaction. The experiment was working exactly as he had hoped. The device was learning, but it could not predict human creativity. It could measure, record, and respond, but it could not imagine. Sam observed carefully, taking notes in his small notebook. Every reaction, every pause, every change was recorded. Mira leaned closer to the window. "It is working. Look at the way it stops and listens. It cannot decide what to do next." Ben smiled. "Exactly. It measures, it records, but it cannot improvise. Human behavior is irregular. We do not always follow patterns. This is the lesson we are giving it." Sam nodded. He had thought carefully about every detail. The mirrors, the chimes, the reflective discs, the toy car, and the radio signals all worked together. Each element added a layer of unpredictability. The device could handle one signal or two, but all of them together created a complex environment. It was exactly what Sam had wanted: a safe, Creative challenge. As Karen moved closer to the center of the lawn, the device's hum grew louder, then softer, then irregular again. It paused several times as if trying to decide which path to follow. The thread shifted slightly under its weight, and the mirrors reflected changing angles of sunlight. The wind chimes created random notes, some high, some low. The toy car moved in small circles, changing the path subtly. The radio signals added yet another layer of complexity. Sam smiled, watching from behind the window. "This is amazing. It is like watching a puzzle trying to solve itself." Mira added, "It is learning, but it cannot adapt fast enough. It is experiencing human creativity firsthand." Ben nodded. "Machines follow rules. They cannot imagine like we do. Today the device will see that humans are unpredictable, clever, and adaptable." The device continued its careful steps, moving slowly across the lawn. Karen wrote notes on her clipboard, unaware of the subtle interactions happening around her. Every movement of the device created a small reaction. The wind chimes moved. The sunlight reflected differently. The toy car shifted slightly. The threads vibrated. The radio signals interacted with the hum. Each element added complexity. Sam continued to take notes, recording every detail. He noticed that the device hesitated more each time it encountered a new combination of signals. It tried to interpret the reflections, the sounds, and the vibrations all at once. It paused frequently, its soft hum changing pitch each time. Sam felt satisfaction. The device was learning, but it was not in control. For the first time, human creativity was influencing a machine designed to enforce rules. Hours passed, and Karen remained on the lawn, recording details and measurements. Sam, Mira, and Ben watched quietly from inside, taking careful notes. They observed how the device reacted to each change in the environment. Every small adjustment, every unpredictable movement created a new reaction. The device was learning, but it could not fully adapt. Sam realized something important. This was not about anger or revenge. It was about understanding, observation, and creativity. He had turned a problem into an opportunity. The device was not broken. It was learning a new lesson. Humans are unpredictable. Humans are clever. Humans can adapt in ways machines cannot anticipate. As the sun began to lower in the sky, Karen finally stepped off the lawn and returned to the sidewalk. She looked at her clipboard, writing a few final notes, unaware of the subtle interactions she had witnessed without knowing it. The device powered down softly, its hum fading into silence. Sam stepped outside carefully, checking each element of the setup. The mirrors reflected the soft light of the evening. The wind chime swayed gently. The toy car had moved slightly along its path. The threads were still in place. The radio signal continued softly, but the experiment had achieved its main goal. The device had learned from the environment, but it had also been challenged. Mira and Ben joined him outside. "It worked perfectly," Mira said, smiling. The device experienced something completely new, something it could not predict. Ben nodded. "Yes, and we did it without breaking rules or causing harm. We taught a machine a lesson in human creativity." Sam felt proud. He looked at the lawn, once ordinary, now transformed into a small laboratory of human ingenuity. Every element had a purpose. Every movement had a meaning. The experiment had shown that humans, with their creativity and adaptability, could influence even the most advanced machines in safe and clever ways. That night, Sam wrote in his notebook. He described every detail of the experiment: the mirrors, the wind chimes, the reflective discs, the toy car, and the radio signals. He recorded every reaction of the device, every pause, and every change in behavior. He wanted to remember the lesson. Human creativity can influence technology in ways machines cannot predict. He felt a quiet satisfaction. Karen's visits, once a source of frustration, had become part of a larger experiment. He had found a way to respond to the problem without anger or confrontation. His lawn was more than grass. It was a place of learning, observation, and creativity. Sam knew that the experiment was only the beginning. The device would continue to adapt, but humans would always have the advantage of creativity and ingenuity. He smiled, thinking about the days to come. His lawn was safe, his neighbors were supportive, and human cleverness had proven itself once again. For Sam, Mira, and Ben, the stage was set for the next steps. They had created a safe, clever, and engaging experiment. They had shown that machines could learn, but humans could teach in ways machines could not fully understand. The journey was just beginning, and the quiet neighborhood was about to witness the results of human creativity in full action. The sun rose slowly over the quiet neighborhood, casting a warm glow across the lawns. Sam stood at his window drinking coffee, his eyes fixed on his own carefully prepared yard. Everything was in place. The mirrors reflected the sunlight at shifting angles. The wind chimes swayed gently, creating soft, unpredictable sounds. The toy car was positioned on its small incline, ready to move along the reflective discs when the wind nudged it. The radio emitted its patterned pulses, blending with the faint hum of the device. Today was the day the full lesson would be delivered. Sam could see Karen approaching from the sidewalk. Her steps were precise, her posture formal, and her clipboard held steadily in front of her. She was unaware of the complexity waiting for her in the small yard. The device, which had been quietly recording, now began to react immediately. Its soft hum rose slightly, as if aware that something different was happening. Mira and Ben joined Sam at the window. Mira whispered, "It is starting already. Look at the hum. It changes as soon as she steps onto the lawn." Ben nodded. "Yes, it is sensing all the patterns, all the signals. The combination of sound, light, and movement is overwhelming for it. It is clever, but it cannot fully predict human creativity." Sam felt a mix of excitement and satisfaction. He had prepared the yard carefully. Each element had a purpose, and now the device was encountering all of them at once. It would have to process multiple layers of information simultaneously. It would have to learn not only from the environment but also from the human behavior around it. Karen began her usual inspection. She stepped onto the grass in neat lines, clipboard in hand. She paused at each corner, writing down notes. Trauk, device followed her movements, sensing each step, recording each vibration and sound. The mirrors reflected sunlight into its sensors at changing angles. The wind chimes created random notes as the breeze moved through them. The toy car shifted slightly, moving along the reflective discs. The radio signals added a soft, patterned interference. The device paused, its hum irregular and uneven. It attempted to process all the conflicting information, but it struggled. It was learning, but it could not decide which signals were important. Sam watched carefully, noting every reaction. The device slowed its steps, hesitated frequently, and emitted soft pulses that rose and fell unpredictably. Mira whispered, "It is confused. It is trying to understand, but the patterns are too complex for it to follow perfectly." Ben smiled. "Exactly. Machines follow rules. They measure, record, and respond. They do not imagine. Human creativity is irregular, adaptable, and unpredictable. Today, it is experiencing the difference firsthand." Sam observed as the device continued to scan the yard. Each element contributed to the complexity. The wind chimes moved with the breeze, creating gentle, random sounds. The mirrors reflected sunlight in shifting patterns. The toy car rolled slowly, moving along its path and nudging the reflective discs. The threads vibrated subtly under the device's weight. The radio signals blended with the soft hum. The device paused several times, recalculating each time. It attempted to interpret the reflections, sounds, and movements. Each time it paused, it emitted a gentle hum, signaling its processing. Sam felt satisfaction. This was exactly what he had hoped for. The device was learning, but it was being challenged by human ingenuity. Karen continued her inspection, unaware of the complex interactions happening around her. She stepped carefully, noting measurements, but she did not see the subtle changes in the environment. The device, however, was sensing everything. It was experiencing an unpredictable sequence of signals that human minds had created deliberately. Sam began to notice small changes in the device's behavior. It hesitated longer at each step. Its hum fluctuated in rhythm and pitch. It occasionally stopped and emitted a soft oscillating sound that seemed almost like confusion. The device was learning not just from the environment, but also from the human actions around it. Sam smiled quietly. "This was the lesson being delivered," Mira whispered. It is processing our creativity. It is learning that humans are not predictable. Ben nodded. Yes, it is adapting, but slowly. This is the perfect demonstration of how human ingenuity can influence technology in ways machines cannot fully anticipate. Sam realized that the lesson was more than about the device. It was about understanding. By creating a safe and clever experiment, they had shown that humans could teach machines something important, that the world is complex, unpredictable, and full of nuance. Machines could measure, record, and respond, but they could not replace human imagination. As Karen moved closer to the center of the lawn, the device paused again. Its sensors picked up all the reflections, sounds, and vibrations simultaneously. It emitted a soft pulse, then another, and then a longer, wavering hum. It had learned to slow down, to analyze, to interpret signals in new ways. Sam felt a quiet pride. The experiment was not just about confusing a machine. It was about demonstrating human creativity and adaptability. The toy car rolled along its path again, nudging the reflective discs. The mirrors reflected sunlight differently as Karen moved, changing the angles of light. The wind chimes created new notes as the breeze shifted. The radio emitted its patterned signal. All these elements combined created an environment that was unpredictable and dynamic. The device responded slowly, adjusting to each new input. It was learning, but it was learning human behavior, not just environmental patterns. Sam realized that this was the true success of the experiment. The device had been taught that humans are clever, adaptable, and unpredictable. It could no longer simply follow rules without considering context. Karen finished her inspection and stepped off the lawn. She glanced at her clipboard, unaware of the subtle interactions she had witnessed. The device powered down softly, its hum fading into silence. Sam, Mira, and Ben stepped outside carefully to examine the yard. Mira smiled. It worked. The device experienced human creativity and learned something new. It did not break, and it did not fail. It adapted. Ben nodded. Exactly. Machines can measure and respond, but they cannot imagine. Today, it learned to recognize human ingenuity. Sam felt proud. He looked at the lawn, once ordinary, now transformed into a small laboratory of creativity. Every element had a purpose. Every movement had meaning. The experiment had delivered its lesson perfectly. He wrote in his notebook carefully. Every reaction of the device, every pause, every change in behavior was recorded. He wanted to remember the details. The lesson was clear. Human creativity and adaptability can influence even the most advanced machines in safe and clever ways. The neighborhood, quiet and peaceful, had witnessed a small but meaningful interaction between humans and technology. Karen, unaware of the lesson she had indirectly participated in, had completed her inspection. The device, however, had learned something important. It had been shown that humans are unpredictable, clever, and adaptable. Sam, Mira, and Ben felt a sense of calm satisfaction. The experiment had succeeded without conflict, harm, or confrontation. It had demonstrated the power of observation, preparation, and creativity. It had shown that human ingenuity could influence even advanced machines in meaningful ways. As the sun set over the quiet neighborhood, Sam looked at his lawn. The mirrors reflected the golden light. The wind chimes swayed gently and the toy car rested on its small path. The threads and radio signals remained in place, ready for further observation if needed. Sam smiled, knowing that the lesson had been delivered. The device had learned and human creativity had proven its value once again. The day had been a success. Sam felt confident that the neighborhood would be safer, his lawn respected, and human ingenuity celebrated. The experiment had shown that rules could be challenged in clever, safe ways. Machines could measure, record, and respond, but humans could teach, adapt, and innovate. For Sam, Mira, and Ben, this was more than a small experiment. It was a demonstration of how humans could influence technology without harm, confrontation, or anger. It was a quiet victory of creativity, preparation, and careful observation. The lesson delivered would remain in the device's memory, a subtle but meaningful understanding of human unpredictability. Sam wrote one final note in his notebook that night. He described the day, the experiment, and the reactions of the device. He noted how human creativity had been recognized by a machine designed only to follow rules. He smiled, knowing that this quiet experiment had proven something important, that humans, with their imagination and adaptability, could always find a way to teach machines in safe and clever ways. The neighborhood was calm, the lawn was intact, and the experiment had succeeded beyond expectations. The device had learned to respect complexity, unpredictability, and human creativity. And Sam, with Mira and Ben by his side, had delivered the lesson perfectly. The morning air was fresh and cool as Sam stepped outside to check his lawn. The sun reflected gently off the mirrors, casting playful patterns on the grass. The wind chimes swayed softly, creating a gentle melody that mixed with the distant chirping of birds. The toy car rested where it had stopped the day before, ready to roll again when nudged by the breeze. The radio emitted its soft patterned pulses. Everything was calm, yet the yard felt alive, as if it had learned something overnight. Sam felt a quiet pride. The experiment with Karen's device had been successful. The machine had learned to adapt to human creativity. It had struggled with unpredictability, hesitated when faced with irregular patterns, and finally processed the complexity without breaking or malfunctioning. The lesson was delivered, and human ingenuity had once again shown its strength. Mira and Ben joined him outside. Mira adjusted a wind chime and smiled. It is amazing how everything works together. The device has learned something important. It has learned that humans are clever and adaptable. Ben nodded. Yes, and it has done so without harm. We did not need confrontation or anger. We created an environment where the device could experience creativity and unpredictability safely. That is a small but meaningful victory. Sam looked around at his yard, feeling the satisfaction of careful planning and observation. His lawn had been more than grass for the past few days. It had been a laboratory, a stage, and a classroom. It had taught a machine the value of human adaptability. And in doing so, it had shown that humans could influence even the most advanced technology without force or conflict. As the three of them talked, they noticed movement at the edge of the street. Karen was walking slowly, clipboard in hand, looking at her notes. She did not see them yet, but she paused near Sam's yard, glancing at the grass. The device that had accompanied her was quietly humming in the background, recording data. Sam observed carefully, noting how the machine seemed calmer than before. It had processed the lessons of unpredictability and human creativity. Mira whispered, "Look at it. It is different now. It is slower, more careful. It is learning from us, not just observing." Ben smiled. Exactly. The device has adapted. It has learned a subtle but important lesson. It now recognizes complexity, variability, and human ingenuity. Sam nodded. This is what I wanted. Not to trick it or break it, but to show it that human behavior is unique and adaptable. It is not always predictable, and it cannot be controlled in the same way rules control machines. The day passed quietly. Sam, Mira, and Ben continued to observe the yard, making small adjustments to keep the experiment dynamic. They tested the toy car, moved the reflective discs slightly, and allowed the wind chimes to create new patterns of sound. The mirrors reflected sunlight in shifting angles throughout the day. The radio signals blended with the device's hum, creating a dynamic environment. Each small change reinforced the lesson of human unpredictability. By afternoon, neighbors began to notice the quiet activity. Some stopped to admire the yard, curious about the small experiments happening there. Children giggled as they watched the toy car roll along its path. Mira smiled as she explained to them, "We are showing the machine how humans can be clever and creative. See how the wind chimes move and the mirrors shine in different directions? Every little change teaches it something new." The neighbors listened with fascination. They asked questions and learned how Sam, Mira, and Ben had prepared the yard. They realized that human ingenuity and observation could influence even machines designed to follow rules. The quiet neighborhood had become a place of learning and curiosity, inspired by one simple lawn and a clever experiment. Meanwhile, Karen returned to the yard for a final inspection. She stepped carefully onto the grass, clipboard in hand. The device hummed softly, sensing the familiar patterns, but now it moved more deliberately. It paused, analyzed, and adapted to the changing signals. Karen did not notice the subtle differences immediately, but the machine did. It had learned to recognize variability, unpredictability, and creative human behavior. Sam watched from the window, noting the changes in the device's responses. Mira and Ben joined him, equally fascinated. The machine moved carefully, responding to each signal with more consideration. It no longer hesitated in confusion, but instead adjusted its actions based on the environment. Human creativity had taught it to adapt, not blindly follow rules. As the day ended, Sam stepped outside to greet Karen. He smiled and said, "Good afternoon, Karen. I hope your inspection went well." Karen looked up, slightly surprised to see Sam outside. "Yes, it did," she said politely. "Your yard meets the HOA standards. Everything seems fine." She paused, glancing at the mirrors, wind chimes, and small devices scattered around. "I do notice some unusual arrangements. What is all this?" Sam smiled. "It is an experiment. We wanted to see how machines react to human creativity. It was a way to show that humans can be clever, adaptable, and unpredictable in safe and creative ways." Karen looked puzzled but nodded. "Interesting. I suppose it is harmless and your yard is well maintained." "Yes," Sam said calmly. "It is safe, and it has taught a small lesson in observation, creativity, and adaptation. Everyone wins." Karen nodded and left, clipboard in hand, unaware that the machine had learned more than she realized. The device, now more aware of human unpredictability, had adapted to new conditions without harm. It had processed lessons in creativity, improvisation, and adaptability. As Karen walked away, Sam felt a quiet pride. The experiment had succeeded. Human ingenuity had won a subtle but meaningful victory. The machine had been taught a lesson without harm or confrontation. The neighborhood had witnessed human creativity in action. The lawn, once ordinary, had become a space of learning, observation, and adaptation. Later that evening, neighbors gathered around Sam's yard. Mira explained the experiment, showing how the mirrors reflected light, the wind chimes created random sounds, and the toy car moved along the reflective path. Children and adults alike were fascinated by the small but clever setup. Sam and Ben answered questions, sharing the details of the experiment and the lessons learned. One neighbor, Mr. Lee, said, "It is amazing how simple tools and human creativity can teach a machine something new." "I never thought a lawn could be so educational," Mira smiled. "It shows that humans are clever. We can observe, experiment, and adapt in ways machines cannot predict. It is not about power or force. It is about creativity and intelligence." Sam nodded. "Exactly. Today was not about anger or revenge. It was about learning and demonstrating that humans can influence technology in positive ways. We have proven that careful observation and creativity are powerful tools." The neighbors admired the yard, appreciating the thought and effort behind it. The experiment had sparked curiosity, discussion, and admiration. Everyone left with a better understanding of human ingenuity and the importance of creativity in interacting with technology. As night fell, Sam, Mira, and Ben walked along the lawn, reflecting on the events of the day. The mirrors reflected the soft moonlight. The wind chimes swayed gently in the evening breeze. The toy car rested in its place, a quiet reminder of the experiment. The radio emitted its final soft pulses for the night. Everything was calm. Sam felt content. The machine had learned, the lesson had been delivered, and the neighborhood had been inspired. Human creativity had proven its value once again. Small, careful actions had led to a meaningful outcome. Mira said softly, "It is amazing to see how humans can teach machines in safe, clever ways. Today we demonstrated that observation, planning, and creativity are just as important as rules." Ben nodded. "Yes, machines can measure and follow rules, but humans can innovate, adapt, and create. That is the lesson that will stay with the device and with all of us." Sam smiled, looking at his yard one last time before going inside. He wrote in his notebook, summarizing the day. Every reaction of the machine, every small movement of the yard, and every reflection of light was recorded. He wanted to remember the details of the experiment, the lesson learned, and the quiet victory of human ingenuity. As he closed his notebook, Sam felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The lawn was more than grass. It was a place of learning, creativity, and adaptation. Human ingenuity had shown its power without harm, confrontation, or anger. The device had learned to recognize complexity and unpredictability. The neighborhood had witnessed a subtle but meaningful lesson. That night, Sam reflected on the journey. It had begun with frustration and irritation, but it ended with understanding and creativity. Human ingenuity had won a quiet but important victory. The lawn, once ordinary, had become a symbol of careful observation, clever planning, and human creativity. Sam smiled, knowing that the experiment had accomplished more than just a lesson for the machine. It had reminded humans of their ability to think, adapt, and teach in safe, creative ways. It had strengthened bonds among neighbors and inspired curiosity, learning, and appreciation for ingenuity. The quiet neighborhood was peaceful, the yard was intact, and the device had adapted to its new understanding. Sam, Mira, and Ben had shown that human creativity, careful planning, and observation could achieve meaningful results. The lesson was complete, the experiment successful, and the small victory of human ingenuity had been celebrated.